All right, everybody, welcome back. It's the Wake Up Crew with your boy Ray G, joined as always by my man Jay Rich, here to talk some NBA prop bets for the Friday, April 22nd slate. But before we get into the games tonight, we've got to review the bets and the picks that we recommended yesterday. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, comment, like. Make sure you engage with us. Tell us what you're thinking about, what you're looking at betting tonight. So yesterday, we talked about Karl-Anthony Towns a couple of different directions. We talked about his par, we talked about his points, we talked about his fantasy score, and all of those were unders. Jay, you took the under 25.5 points. He was well under. I took the under 46 fantasy score, well under that. We talk about Cat. It's one or two cats. He's either going to be fantastic and awesome, or he's going to be, I said he's either going to be a god or god-awful, and last night he was god-awful. So that was a good hit. Dorian Finney-Smith, we posted that in the comments. Fantasy score is not even out right now while we're talking about this video, so I normally run it through the model, post the plays at least an hour, 2 hours before tip-off, but Dorian Finney-Smith over 24 fantasy score was check. Nikola Jokic, talked about it, Jay. That 59 number did not scare me. He was pacing for it in game 2. He fell a little bit short of this number in game 1, and that was playing a really bad game. He was Joker last night, 18 boards, scored 30+ points, had a couple of steals, and he absolutely obliterated this number. So I definitely think PrizePicks will raise this up to probably 60, 62 for the next matchup. So that was a cash. Ja Morant under. This son of a you-know-what. His under fantasy score was 48. He had 48 on the dot, saved by a couple of last-second free throws as Minnesota was trying to claw their way back into it. So that was a push. Didn't cash, but it didn't hurt us. But Anthony Edwards, Jay, under 23.5, over 23.5 points, did not hit. And Rudy Gobert, damn it, Rudy. I went to the well like 3 times, done. Under Rudy, doesn't score enough, not involved, and he's not doing enough to hit the fantasy score, so that was a miss. So overall, decent night, wasn't bad. Could have been a little bit better with that Ja if he would have just don't hit one free throw, Morant. But the unders were well in play. But we got some good ones that we want to talk about for tonight's slate, and we'll get into it right after the intro, baby.
For all the high-flying action, take a step back and relax. It's time to count that money, the NBA props. No look any further. You know what time it is. Presented by PrizePicks, NBA props. Let's
count that money, man. All right, Jay, let's get into the first matchup. Who are you looking at tonight? Who do you like?
So the guy I'm going to be starting with is Chris Paul under 12 assists. And the reason why I like this play is because Devin Booker's inactive. We know that Devin Booker probably one of, if not the deadliest catch and shoot shooter in the NBA. This number is 11.5 on the book, so you're already getting a little bit of juice there. And more importantly, we know that Devin Booker's not going to be playing in this game, and that for me is a big factor. Chris Paul only averages 10 assists per game versus 11 assists per game when Booker is active. And then on top of that, he's not going to hit this number very often. I believe he's only hit it in 3 of his last 10 games when Booker is inactive. So for me, that's number I'm willing to bet. And so even I believe 2 of those games were a push on top of that. He only hit 14 one time, and it was against the woeful Portland Trailblazers. So for me, I'm going to be taking the under on Chris Paul at 12 assists. I just think it's too high. I don't get it with Booker out. I think it's a number that's going to drop, and it already has dropped from 12.5. Ray, how do you feel about it overall in this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, you're the one who dove into the data on this one, but no Devin Booker. That's a weapon that, Chris Paul doesn't have. He may have to take more of an onus in the scoring role. I'm with you. At 12 with no Devin Booker, that's tough. It would be nice to know how many assists he averages for Devin Booker, or how many assists Devin Booker allows Chris Paul to get on a game-by-game basis, and really see what that loss is going to do for him. But I'm with you. If the books have it at 11.5, you're getting a little bit of natural juice here on PrizePicks. So I'm fine with the under, with Chris Paul probably going to have to do a little bit more in the scoring department. I want to pivot to Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? And they do not have his fantasy score up right now. They do have his par at 55.5, which is, a high number. And over the last 5 games, he has not been hitting that. But we saw him go absolutely nuclear in the last game versus Chicago, getting to 60 points, rebounds, and assists. But I will be targeting and wanting to see what Giannis's fantasy score line is. With no Chris Middleton in this matchup, I mean, Giannis is going to have to do it all, man. He's going to have to score. He's going to have to distribute. And even when you see his assist total, right, his assists sitting at 7, his rebounds at 13.5. So the edge that you get is if Giannis can get you, and I say if, with air quotes, a couple of blocks or a steal here and there, I will be targeting the over Giannis's fantasy score. It was set at 56 last game. He had 74 as a fantasy score in the last matchup against Chicago. As long as that thing is under 63, under 62, no Chris Middleton, Giannis having to get it done. Milwaukee in a really rough boat right now versus Chicago. This is no cakewalk for them. I think Giannis is going to have to play like the MVP, be the MVP. So I will post the fantasy score picks a little bit later in the day. Make sure you tap back into the comments. But Giannis is one that I probably will be running here on PrizePicks. So just for placeholder's sake, I'm going to throw the par in there. I'm going to hit over, but this will be adjusted to fantasy score for Giannis.
Yeah, and so, Ray, actually, it's funny that you want the over for the fantasy score because I'm actually looking at the under on the par. And the reason why is because he just doesn't hit it with Chris Middleton not in the lineup. He only hits it in 4 of 10 when he plays 34 minutes and 3 of 10 when Chris Middleton isn't in the lineup. You think, that usage goes through the roof, but what it allows is for defenses to really key in on Giannis overall. And so, actually, in a game they did play against Chicago more recently, he did go under this number. It was very close. He had 55, but he did go under. And so for me, it's just a number that's a little bit too high. I get that people think he's going to have this crazy usage, but if you really watch that game down the stretch, Alex Caruso played Giannis very, very well down the stretch, forced the ball out of his hands. Can he get the 7 assists? Is he capable of this number? Absolutely. But you see this number on the books opened at 56.5. It's already been bet down to 55.5 and may continue to go down simply because Giannis is not hitting this number very often. And in his last 10 games, he's 1 of 10. But when he plays 34 minutes, he's 4 of 10. We expect big minutes from Giannis in this one, but I don't think he's going to get to 55.5. On the road, a lot of usage from the superstars. I'm going to be staying away from it. But, Ray, there's a guy I want to touch on now, and we're sticking to the Chicago game. For whatever reason, it feels like we just love the Chicago game, and I'm going to be going back to the Zach LaVine well at 2.5 3-pointers made. And so for me, this is one where it's just like, why are we staying away from him? This is one I'm just running back. 2.5 threes, minus 130 on the books. He was 3 of 4 last game. And then as well, Chris Middleton is a big factor in this. Because if he's not playing, that lessens their perimeter defense, which is already bad against the three-point shot. Zach LaVine, the last time they played without Chris Middleton, he went 4 of 7 from 3. And so for me, I'm probably going to be running this one back and going with Zach LaVine. How do you feel about Zach LaVine? And do you think that running it back is a good play in this matchup?
I mean, it's at 2.5, and he's shooting a lot. He's shooting 10, 11 3-point attempts, and all you're asking him to do is go 30%. So I don't think that's a high threshold for Zach LaVine. He will be shooting it. I don't mind it at all. Going back to that well, I might stay away from it, but I don't think it's a bad bet at all. I honestly don't. I don't think it's a bad play. The line stayed the same. He's putting up the shots, so I'm fine with LaVine over 2.5 3-pointers. And back to that Giannis, talking about his fantasy score. And I think that's where fantasy score helps you out a little bit, because if he does get those blocks and he does get a couple of steals here and there, that will allow him to potentially hit that over in that matchup. And whatever Giannis has to do, he's getting to the foul line, he's distributing the ball, and then the bonuses you get, for the assist at 1.5 per assist and the rebounds at 1.2. I'm willing to go back to that well, but if for some reason I decide, you know what, Jay Rich has talked me out of it, I don't want to touch it, I may not go back to it, I still think there are some players from the Milwaukee side, and I'm talking about Brook Lopez and his potential fantasy score in this matchup. I believe his line was set at 25 last game. You see his par here at 22.5. When you're looking at the par over the past 2 games versus Chicago, he's hit that number in both games and really kind of exploded last game with 32. Be interested to see what Brook Lopez's fantasy score line is. So throwing him up here as a placeholder, I will be looking at Brook Lopez over fantasy score. Hopefully that number comes in at around, they bump it up no more than 2. If it's at 27 or below, I think I'll be in. If they try to juice it up to 30, I may look in a different direction.
Yeah, no, I really like that one. And to your point, he was utilized heavily down the stretch on top of that. When Middleton went out, they did turn to Brook Lopez to go against the play that I'm going to be talking about next, and it's Nikola Vucevic.
Yep.
Vucevic has been on a mission since they started the playoffs this year.
Yep.
33.5 is just a number that's simply too low. Like you see, he hit it in both games, 39 and 44. When Vucevic plays 34 minutes, he is going over this number in 7 of his last 10 games. Versus Milwaukee this year, he's averaging 35.5 minutes, and in this series, he's averaging 37.5 minutes. This number is minus 132 on the books at 34.5. So you're getting a lot of juice. If things kind of just play the way they've been playing out, Vucevic is going to be all over this number. And like we've seen, he's been attacking in the post at Brook Lopez. It's funny to watch both these guys go against each other because neither one of them can stop the other on defense, and it's lending to some lofty totals for both of them, both on the boards and in the scoring department. I know, Ray, you're going to be looking at Vooch for his fantasy score because it's one we've hit both games, and it's played out for us both games as well.
100%. I will be looking at Vooch's fantasy score. And the last guy I want to talk about, and we can't not have this guy on our TVs and not talk about him, but Patrick Williams. His par is sitting at 14.5. Had a really good game last game versus Milwaukee. You know, I was watching the game and I was like, damn, who is this Patrick Williams that continues to get these rebounds, doing it on both ends of the court? Interested to see what his fantasy score line opens up at, because I will be looking at Patrick Williams and his over fantasy score total. He absolutely crushed it in the last game, and with the par so low, man, I'm thinking this might be 19, 18. We saw them put Nick Claxton at 18 fantasy score, 18 to 20. I am mildly interested in Patrick Williams over fantasy score, not the par, but the fantasy score. I mean, Jay, we talked about it at the top of the show. We like a lot of these Chicago Bulls players. I think Caruso fantasy score is also in play because of how good he is on defense. And when I'm looking through the other games, if I were going to take an under on some of the heavy stars, JV, Jonas Valanciunas would be one that I would think about going under his fantasy score. But right now, those numbers are not out. So please tap back in later on today into the comments. We will pin it at the top to put the official kind of picks in there. But I do like Vooch over his par, and definitely looking at fantasy score because he's good for something on the defensive side of the ball, block, steal, something of that nature. Anything else you want to talk about?
I need a bit of an intervention really quickly before we head out of here. I got to talk about Trae Young's assists because every game they keep dropping over and over and over. And right now they're sitting at 8.5 on PrizePicks. Now, I did some digging to really try my best to find out what it is that we do with Trae Young. 4 in the first game, 7 in the last game. Can he get 9? Can he get that 10 number? 9 of his last 10 games at home, he's hit 9. But against Miami, it's just like, it's his kryptonite, you know? The model has him projected for 10.5 assists. The other baseline projections have him projected for 10.9. It's just everything says that Trae Young can go over in this matchup, but Miami is just the one team that for whatever reason he can't figure it out. I don't know if I'm taking this number, but I want people to know that if you do like it, the model says it's an over. It's a data play. Yep. Everything's there. 9 of last 10 at home, 10.5 projection. It's just, at what point is Trae Young going to get it going? And I don't know when that's going to be, but it has to happen. He can't just simply play poorly in all these matchups against Miami. Miami's a great defense, great team, slow pace, which is one of the big factors here. But Trae Young has to have one good game in him, and I think it's going to be game 3, and I like this 8.5 number for Trae Young.
I mean, the model loves it, man. 21% prop to projection edge. Spit out a green boy, big bright green over the projection, 10.5. The season-long projection right at 11 assists, and it's juiced heavily to the over. So I know you're saying you don't know, Jay, but the data is saying yes, 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 over Trae Young's assists, and 8.5 is quite low for Trae Young. So I'm kind of in. We'll see what I can find with the fantasy score. Jimmy Butler, I've got to check him out. He absolutely crushed his fantasy score of 40 last game, but he also went ballistic scoring the ball. He had 40 damn points. So, of course, the fantasy score went over. It was a little worrisome early because he was scoring a lot but wasn't getting any rebounds or assists. But Jimmy Butler, as Jimmy Butler does, got a couple of steals, a block here and there, assist. I just want to see what they open it up at. If it's at 40 again, I may be inclined to take the over. Point is, in our mix and match strategy, we can't just take all Chicago players. So here's the thing. We're not going to force bets. We'll run them through the model. It's a data-driven process. If we like some plays, we play them, but we never, ever, ever, ever force bets just to put 3 or 4 out there. So sort of the core ones that we're looking at right now, Jay really likes Zach LaVine over 2.5 3-pointers, Vooch over 33.5 par, Chris Paul under 12 assists. I'm looking at Giannis's over fantasy score, and I also want to see what the official lines for Alex Caruso, Patrick Williams, and Brook Lopez, their fantasy score as well. As always, if you tail, give him hail, and if we fail, don't bail. We'll be back tomorrow for more data-driven picks. Hopefully you guys win, cash out. Good luck. We'll see you tomorrow. We out. Peace.